Dear Anderson Cooper in CNN, and Dear Judge Napolitano in Fox News. They're remembering simultaneously uses of Anderson Cooper. I want to change your mind. Change your fact-cheating nature regarding uses of the phrase systemic racism. Because a lot of reasons. But this is the same way computers work. A value, an identity of more than how and why computers have to work the way they do is because one identity of value/value progression is a relationship to all instances with all identity ground locations. When I was a kid, it was confessed, demonstrated, and recorded. They used the paths next to parks. They used the phenomena of geographical differences, where people might have, where it would seem like people were in communications where they weren't, or have a court decide if they're arguing about something like that. But what they had was creation of instances where everyone was acting, but they were sharing different roles with sequence shifts, self-valued, where they had lies and lie progressions, where their parents and people tied to their parents were simultaneously being recorded, confessed, and demonstrated and confirmed. Roles with the confessions and the demonstrations of little kids and everyone's uses of each other's names and sequence relationships and timed. And so as identity of the ground relationships. And so as our value/value progression relationships. Roles with criminally foreign influenced premises treatments and sequence treatments, uses of other people's names, and roles with investigations, investigators, and vetting identities criminally foreign influenced. Now these are good people that are taken through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, uses of time. In other words, where this is progressing, more and more it is valuing, having had been valued, that which is incapable of defending itself as a quality of fact-cheating nature, regarding other people's names, regarding sequence, regarding what they say when they make convictions and opinions. Because if free speech was allowed to speak of opinions and convictions that are using finite, active, and progressive properly, and the two identities of sequence simultaneous nature, invisible but still discernible and separable from that, and how they are valued completely or differentially. And so the value of what is forcing value transfer from here, Leith of Hadith, a scientific term, more probably. Already the how it was simultaneously never used or contemplated or even allowed by the sense and sensibility of everyone to be demonstrated. Before modern religions, already all identity ground locations, sciences were already tactically parted from what having been revealed since before criminal foreign influence contained the order of countries individually grouped and together, specifically to make, to engineer, to exploit as victims. People blaming other things, others themselves for the real cause of negative value nature progression. Acts and natures, now they know we're not on this. But the point is, with the identity of the ground locations, instances, these are people that are involved with World Trade Center and with the Washington, D.C. Before, I found things out of sequence too. the things that my father knew, but I didn't know. Because he was doing, he was a pro se plaintiff. You know, he had lawyers before too. My father had no criminal record. He had one thing on his record, by the way, breaking park rules, and he wanted to fight that further too. And because I don't know, like he never told me this, but it is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed. People have been attaching him and me and kids of all ages, people of all ages and their family members, to fake words, fake sequence relationships, fake ties. They've been used remotely. How this is also recorded having been and being a whole bunch of names tied to a park in Wethersfield that I don't know. They create instances where you're not going to be able to communicate. This is also where you have the boys and girls. Maintain self-valued, criminally foreign influence stewards of the law. And opinions and convictions of the parents with other people's names. And uses of their perception in those contexts where they are tactically drawn to make people self-value sequence shifts, identity thefts and frauds, and roles with falsified police reports, and roles with the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the branches of government, individually grouped and together, are recorded distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, and progressive lies. Kept needing to hide from themselves and others uses of their identities as standing criminally legalized, criminal insidiousness natures. Now these are phrases like criminal insidiousness nature that I'm not even a lawyer. It is recorded by correlations means that the bar itself and the lawyers and the sciences are left by our founders forced, worse than prostrate fact treatment nature, slaves without free speech and forced to pretend other, in layers short of being able to leave that detailed for us. In other words, for example, on a side, the sequence shifts are the short words and their protraction and those people's names, because they have my name told to them. I don't know them. Like now, these are. I'm not saying this is a bad girl, but she did bad things. I mean, in other words, they're using the sense and sensibility. I don't even know her name. Associated with Eric Oliveri. Associated with people with in the intelligence community. That means judges, prosecutors, their family members. It means former director of the FBI, federal criminal co-defendants before they got caught. They were involved with this. They were involved with all this method that has all these juxtaposed confessions. And so, in other words, and then sensibilities in relationship to where there are those there means by correlation nature. By correlation, where you know there's a worse than war crimes method that is leveraged against our country, and that the passions and emotions that want and need to be good of everyone, especially like when we're dealing with each age of fact, treatment nature distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. This is where temporary positive can only long to be. Temporary / lasting positive, but now no longer through and as that system, native pure, no matter who you are. That's why it's important to read why and how the name chief is distinct from president. And see, well, we never had a quality of fact treatment nature allowed, afforded by any location, area, or state of any modern nation because of this. And that simultaneously prevents any leader from being anything other, from doing anything other but forced entertainment of, tricked, hurt, forced, persuaded, and worse, to entertain simultaneously insidious, simultaneously overt uses of premises treatment, sequence treatments, of finite, active, progressive treatments, of identity treatments. And this is where and how science is obligated to reveal what the ancients knew, which is, we have, in other words, a quality of fact treatment nature that knows that evolution science works with ground. Now, if we contemplated this honestly, since before cars, the pathology of homes, from Russia to here, same thing in what they're called suburbs. I don't know, I just saw a couple of houses look exactly like the ones here. And this was since before cars. And then the modern streets just fit there. The scale of everything just fits to that. From an as recorded per science, tactically denatured base upon tactically denatured, you can't denature what nature is nature. It's going to reveal evolution's fruits and gifts if you follow its system wants to stay positive unto itself, the concentrated value of Earth. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously in rest of the space, in relationship to the rest of space nature. Also, we are being forbid uses of evidences, or even to speak about where and how time is used too fast, too slow, where the branches of government individually grouped and together have treatments of positive and negative, have treatments of facts, have treatments of things as criminal-facetious natures of that. And where and how that was already being and having been anticipated. They have all kinds of people with jobs, sense and sensibilities. They tell them how to, this is how we speak concisely or something like that. They're lying about people's words. They're preventing the people the short words. Then while they're stacking other natures of organized crime acts roles, when they're lying about, when they're not following the processes as interbranch. For example, over the past 4 months around, distinctly and non-distinctly, and since before right before the pandemic stuff started being reported and stuff like that, there is an officer, Jerry Miller. There is officers switching and forging names with the name Sullivan. And before that, on 2 different falsified police reports with various natures of courts, prosecutors, and judges involved with people with the name McGee. These are also military families. And with inter-campuses, they already had positions with campuses through administrations. They already had exploitation of instances they were creating on each campus of each age and nature as victim predators, self-valuing that having been a method that made self-valued in the past. Methods of blaming the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and or self-valuing them. Blame the other things others themselves. And again, and or self-valuing that haven't been. So that predicate acts delivery system method, if you will, I'm not a lawyer. Again, we don't need the law. We need correlation nature. We need the nature of the law. We need that identity of truth that is true always, while as exceptions. And so it can speak what truth really speaks. So it can be truth that is also positive unto itself, temporary lasting. But that's a native system that increases unnatural burdens upon physical Native Americans still, for example, that are syntax oriented, fact treatment oriented, and sequence oriented. So these people are involved with sequence shifts, where they use a crime method that has a whole bunch of people with different methods that are going to value lie progressions, that are involved with conversations that are reliant upon lipoaggressions that started from child databases, from instances off there, where they approach people like that trying to perceive things. But it demonstrates how their roles through time. Also, there are means recorded when we play this out, having mandated law actually followed. It shows that and how locations, areas, and states courts and police forms and the federal ones and the defenses of their identities. That was where and how this method uses remotely investigations, and identities of law, defenses of themselves, to keep self-valued, what they're doing with the instances creation and with the uses of them. Because those are sequence shifts, illusions that were used on that park, on the parts of Wethersfield, all near people near corners, people all along route from Wethersfield to CCSU, and with the corner of the street in a house involved recorded people tied with all kinds of medical racketeering, identity theft, frauds. No one's watching. Doctors are attaching little kids and their family members to fake locations, because they were doing this with the interbranch too. They're doing this with the military too, and these are military that are criminally foreign influenced, like Justin Levinsky, his wife, Eric Burgess, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, having been involved with various natures of court clerks and their family members, and judges and prosecutors, involved with predicate acts on and off those locations with them, leading up to the World Trade Center, and in that context and after it, and then leading up to a 2006 district court case in Connecticut and since it. And as their rules with like in West Hartford locations and on and off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, that is through time involved also West Hartford campuses further involved with people that are involved with predicate acts with all this and the overt criminal enterprises and private ones other. Same time kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, find an active aggressive and exploitation of those instances. So these are also, there's also a Joshua Julian who is involved with the New Britain Superior Court with passion crimes and with the school of a principal child offender before he was caught, and he's involved also with a Rob Rodriguez through time with the intelligence community, associated with as the Morrow families, also involved with dozens of people, like two Corone brothers. I don't know them. There were a couple instances they would say, "Oh, well, how they even know them?" I don't know them. They're involved with people with the Department of Transportation and Department of in like those positions that are also Washington, D.C., and syntax oriented. What took this manifest was a phenomenon in relationship to how federal criminals, too, before they were caught, like pension thieves and stuff like that, and as ones that were co-defendants of former director of the FBI in a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. They're also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved predicate acts with that medical location, with as many people associated with that, and also roles with identity thefts, frauds, sequence shifts with areas. These are also people leading up to and in the World Trade Center attack context. For example, proven was post-dated documents have been presented post-dated from inside the court had been presented to the judges to appear late, right before the World Trade Center attack. And that proven led up to a 2006 case. And right before that, a Thaddeus Grabowski and two Mendez police and a Domain and their family, in the Domain family, they were recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts on off Fox Connecticut News and with the buildings next to them, and involved with identity theft, fraud, secret, and creation of instances where they could pretend other. Now, so the judges in the courts, positions they switch and forge names, including state's attorneys. They make them get the roles with it. Private attorneys, they make allegations. They pretend people make conspiracy theories. They pretend people have delusions. They have delusions. They pretend they have conversations with people to do that. They value such having been stacked into databases and such having been criminally verified through a method that keeps methods as its breaching screen and tool and weapon and worse. As also what Hartford Hospital has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, being and having been involved with the intelligence community, with communications with, prisoners, and where and how, where they use the syntax, where they use what they set up with that made the naive reaction of using torture. See, this is where they already had complete syntax nature captivation. They had fake sides. So these are also people that are involved with the locations all along the routes that go next to Hartford Hospital, for example. Already being and having been involved with juxtaposed natures of predicate, methods of predicate acts, even. And it shows how this is maintained self-value, self-cultivated. But we have to see it through where and how. No one's allowing reported how the people pretending to be about mandated law are preventing it. It is also recorded how the individuals personally grouped and together of the prisons tied to the interbranch and of the individually grouped and together methods, hiding their uses of them remotely. So I can help us, the whole country, the whole world, with this, if we just admit it. I mean, I'll get pantheism. It'll be owned by not taxes but our own wanted, needed help, with a plan that's going to claim everything bottom. And so therefore, we're going to start with a plan that's going to move up, and we're not going to accept. So we're all going to work the identity, the ground locations that are unacceptable, that were built like modules to maintain such measure. Like, for example, in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right around the corner from where George Washington had to come to meet with the French general to get help for the last battle of the Revolutionary War, having to leave slavery entrenched. So he chopped down the fake branches of government, but he had to leave fake branches of government, and had to leave slavery entrenched. So before, what is a module, for example, and a counter module is in there, but module is when they're making rights treatments of who's going to vote with that like that. They don't have possession of the identity yet, America's. But they have to pretend other, like every other modern nation, in relationship to phenomenon inseparable from our fact treatment nature, syntax nature, where and how it is important critical, increasingly valued to understand why and how we are native pure, even if we're not Native Americans, and why and how. That is syntax necessary. That is means and resource. If you can't, that is true always. What is evolution? What causes its fruits and gifts? What makes inventions work or not in relationship to that identity of value progression as everything at once, individually grouped and together, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. That which is the subject, where and how things can be further positive or negative. Where positive can be used as a criminal and seditious nature of itself. So if you think about the little kid who never had integrity of the law, counter the Predicate Acts, delivery system method, and all that involved with it, when as you're a little black kid, and you go to the school, and they tell you, oh, school's good, bad, like with a club in their hand, like a caveman, as their presentation of cavemen. In other words, we are positive is a quality of fact-cheaping nature, quality/S of fact-cheaping nature, in demonstration of the one the identity of value, recorded effectively, tactically being and having been separated from uses by each science, which cannot speak for its individual nature properly without speaking for and understanding how it is an exception nature present in the other sciences and the other true, conversely, and correlation being its own science. So we have time used too fast, too slow, always. Involved with the identity ground locations. Also with the Hartford Hospital has lawyers and police forms, personally criminally involved. Is how we have to do it. We're not gonna let them play these games. So that there's a Leahy family that pretended they had conversations with me, and they're involved with people with the intelligence community, prosecutors, people that work, dozens of people that work with New Britain Superior Court are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated long being and having been involved with falsified police reports, with people tied to and as a Leahy family, involved with medical racketeering, fake identity thefts, frauds, with child campuses, and as a whole bunch of people with a former Mayor Gold. Also, when I was an adult, one of the last times I went jogging, years ago, there was a Joe Aiello and a former Mayor Gold. I had no words with them right when I came out of path. Now, these are people also involved with the fire departments, with the Wethersfield Police, forging and switching names, confessing that they have one officer only named McGee, but two officers use that name. And so on different police reports, and with the New Britain Superior Court judges, even female judges, even black and white female judges, that were also recorded involved with the creation of instances where they have black and white people with the intelligence community, with the military, involved with wire crime, sequence shifts, identity thefts, frauds, uses of it, and roles with that which prevents people from demonstrating, speaking about how the negative shows is positive if you look at it, but we're not being allowed to do it because we have insidious natures of positive and negative and uses of other people's names. Like when you say racism, simultaneously pretending people don't speak clear. So we have like this guy Dianetics. We have I was just watching that with the advertisement presentation of it, and they're talking about how people don't speak clear. They can't afford, to not switch names into branch and private tied to them because of how they've had investigations, and identities of the law used remotely by one method that made everyone self-evaluate because of how it uses identity/S. The same way computers have to work. Uses locations, uses memory, uses instances. See, but they can't afford to have computers summarized quickly, properly, because this summarizes quickly, properly what is increasingly going on with the kids. The same victim predator families, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and interbranch, and military. Same ones, foreign military too. And the families they have here and there with stuff on records. But of course, there's that off the records, but recorded, but no one's allowed to talk about it originally and still. So Wethersfield police, would they use the method, and the courts and the police forms, they use method distinctly, non-distinctly. Methods like saying, well, I don't know about that, so let's focus on this here, which is simultaneously where and how they've been just valuing consciously and with delusions and with criminally foreign influence tricked her, persuaded to value fake things in databases. Now this was, and this was since before computers too. So we have to understand this. In other words, right around, they have a witch trials house right around the corner from where George Washington had to leave slavery, but was able to get the help of the French general to become a country too, still captive too, still needing to pretend other too, still needing to use exceptions and exception nature to defend themselves doing that, still increasingly needing to keep all that exceptions and exception nature tied to truth are in demonstration of. So we have this method sustained, and we have motivations of it, because these are the same people on and off Harvard campuses, and uses of that which were timed too. These are also uses of the sense and sensibilities of the people supposed to be against Russians, but they're in collusion with it. Also per how they have each age of fact-cheating nature, the complete possession of this self-valuing roles with that, increasingly valuing that having been, and the cause, and or the valuing that the causes of it having been blamed on other things other than themselves, and then defending that. Increasingly uses of premises treatments that are criminally foreign influence, delusions, and rot, sequence shifting, incapable of affording people free speech outside of courts and in life, because in courts and in life they've been fabricating audio and video into databases. All the databases tied to the prisons and into the military, they're in the furtherance of what keeps victims cultivating their own. In other words, we don't need wars. We need mandated, we need correlation nature. And we need a plan for reliefs for modern nations, like to have nuclear weapons and to pretend you could speak for you know, your people, Russians, Americans. You can't be in the infrastructure and the means to it, and the defenses of that as fact-cheating nature that came since before cars. When that sick method, as the slavery of everyone sickly, distinctly drawn that way, where it's syntax nature, fact-cheating nature. Otherwise, if someone tried to free a slave and they locked them in prison, they would say, whoa, look at your reasoning, what you locked me up with. No, they had to hide their live aggressions towards the prison too, no. And so this is why St. Nicholas had to be recruited by the church. I learned that from Wikipedia.com, St. Nicholas had to be recruited by the church who needed to know how to defend their takes on the nature of the law. And this is the same way that our branches of government need to be shown how to speak for and think about and understand and know the nature of the law. And this is where and how nature is value / value as nature, as three distinct sequence / simultaneous natures of one observably two other identities of sequence / simultaneous nature before the order of the final, and after the value of what is progressive value. Already what we're now, just like the order of what is active value is already not the value. When they were designing, it was as victims, but it was as victim predators, not realizing. And realizing where they did realize, they didn't realize the extent of it. So all victim predators. We're in an identity of negative value nature progression that modern nations were tricked, hurt, persuaded, enforced, and worse, made and maintained as what blaming on other things, others themselves, and then defending that. Increasingly incapable of being sophistication, while increasingly needing to pretend to be sophistication. So they pretend being, they don't know how to speak for what is adult, but they have to pretend so offensively. So they couldn't afford an election that wasn't with all positions of communication in the furtherance of that which prevents mandated law to locations and values in the past recorded, what is actually recorded, the uses of the instances where they have people that don't even know each other, where they have criminally foreign influence uses of all programs with the kids, with the all state locations. So so therefore, the same way they use Cub Scouts, and then they have it go to people's houses. No, they're using the sense and sensibilities they're keeping. They have a breaching method, has where the branches legitimately needed to tell lies, to hide things. Self-value used to hide the breaching method. Everyone has the nature of opinions that are vile, and so they're pretending passions and emotions. And if you're a little black kid, even, you can discern that. And see, but this knew that would be, and it knew what the reactions would be. We could trace right to the people. I mean, in other words, the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones and the interbranch individually grouped together. They were criminally legalized. And so the pretending other also has manifest, means by that correlation has to show it. That just like with computers have to be this way. For example, a way I'm about to, like in other words, that overall identity of value/value progression, it is inseparable from the smallest detail. It is inseparable from group details. That's why and how everything is individual grouped and together. Where and how it is order. Where and how yet all is bound. All gather round. Earth distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously to the rest of space nature and to the rest of the planets. Round. Earth so big that round is flat simultaneously. And I guess, it works out. With the sea. The 10. Kipis Marcius calls you home again. Please follow mandated law for Weathersfield Police. Now they want to separate subjects while they have the confessions as threats and as demonstrations and as weapons, where and how they have two officers that use in two different instances where they have been involved also further with sexually natured and identity thefts and frauds, even down to how they have the girls involved with wire crime acts and methods and uses of it, and use of roles with that, and uses of their excuses and of their kids as a because they need to pretend things, they need to pretend passions and emotions, they need to hide life progressions because they've already been doing that. So please follow mandated law. Because the online Facebook pages, interbranch, and internetworks are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed uses of fake passions and emotions towards what they can pretend as behavior and perception about it. And they're leaving out exceptions and exception nature, sequence shifts. They're leaving out how their emotions, pretended legitimate, are also evidence. The sequence shifts, and the means they do to duck and block people out so they can't record, so they can't report anything. They use the crime method of pretending that people don't want to go to a police station to make a police report. Is not tied to them. They're recorded offensively through time. This is a video affidavit. When I was a kid, there was a kid that gave me Chris Walters gave me an affidavit regarding this, and regarding people that create instances where they attach people to fake words, fake sequence relationships to each other, and they use their family members through time. See, he gave me that information. Then they persuaded him, but to do, I don't know what they were using it for. I know it was tied to Predicate Acts. I never saw him on the college of CCSU or Trinity College. But there are judges and prosecutors and military and a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of foreign nations and people with fire departments tied to Washington, D.C. and the World Trade Center and this ILO family and this Kerr family involved with Predicate Acts. As people I never even had classes with. I never had anything to do with them. There's also Mr. Abruzzi, who is also by people with Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, and with Trinity College further involved then and now with the further Predicate Acts on and off the child campuses in Wethersfield and on and off the principal child campus then and now. There are a number of accounts with the name KNERR. One of them with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page is recorded with rape threats involved with what New Britain Superior Court recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through their roles with falsified police reports. They forged names, switch, and switch arresting officers' names. Who, as officers that were also involved, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. As officer, I never arrested me. Pretended he was arresting officer, switched names with it. After they already did that with other departments. And made all other kind of syntactic exceptions they could pretend. Like with private police, with Central Connecticut State University and their family members on off campuses involved with Predicate Acts through time and uses of that. Were recorded, confirmed, confessed, demonstrated. And because also their uses of instances where they have such. And sequence shifts, where they have strangers approach people, because then they know that they're going to hide how investigators could be discerned when people bring up subjects later. So they take collusion with that which effectively kept Central Connecticut State University used as a module and or as a platform that was used to facilitate motivations as roles and needs as uses of their life progressions in the World Trade Center attack context, on off the Ninth Circuit, next to it, the court, and on off the World Trade Center with a whole bunch of people tied to Claudia Scalora, and as people like a DeMoro family, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated through time involved with Predicate Acts with houses on my street and people tied to them, who are forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to roles with him and the former director of the FBI, involved with federal criminals since before they got caught, involved with child abuses of little girls, including sexually, including medically, and their roles with people involved with statistics classes and stuff like that. All the departments, the acting department at Central Connecticut State University also has a whole bunch of people on Church Street in Old Wethersfield involved with intercities with that, and with like. So I don't know these. I don't know Heather Hansen, but her, and briefly in context instances where she made a whole bunch of confession, demonstration, recorded, confirmed roles with this. As someone I never had a class with, They put me in a summer school class in 8th grade. That was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Roles where there have been creating instances with people associated with New Britain Superior Court and with Hartford courts and their family members involved with predicate acts in my street and people tied to them through time and their family members and everyone's extended family members. This is how they use the sense and sensibilities of everyone attached to fake words. The databases hold lies. So I need a response for the Wethersfield Police, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. My town's police chief is also involved, and 1 year ago, and with the Dillon family involved with the houses, the same houses, with forced roles with them, forging, switching names, and with the narratives of the Wethersfield Police with this. And the Wethersfield town offices and other elections locations and religious locations. The Kerr family is also recorded involved with medical religious locations used in religious craziness and physical delusions as people involved with medical racketeering of various natures, locations next to them involved. These are foreign and domestic families associated with the ones on and off Central Connecticut State University and on and off Trinity College. And as their roles with investigations of that because of uses of identity law too. Per their roles with attackers through other natures of motivations, natures of interest. They have been needing to hide their lipoaggressions per uses of courts and those identity ground locations every day. Uses of their extended family members. Uses of their insights into things associated with Town Line Drive, in the corner of Town Line Drive and Solstein Highway, and those businesses around there. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts, the creation of instances where the police forms and that are criminally formed have to hide lipoaggressions. So they create instances they stack up too, and already stacked and exploited and had exploited as their rules interstates and also being and having been intercities. There are people with sound view also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. You know, they've been just typing whole fake things into databases everyone's entire life. And they either self-value that, you know, or they're going to exploit you and take away your ability to be science's voice anyway, but everyone's going to pretend other. That's not systemic racism. That was a method. That was a human fact, cheap nature breaching method. That was to control us remotely from where and how undiscerned. But everyone's going forward, and that's exploited too. Where and how undiscerned. Everyone's defending roles within that, using tactically, criminally foreign influence premises treatments, delusions, rot, sequence shifts, identity thefts, and fraud, using lies about emotions and passions on a mass scale. So I say that calmly. People say, okay, then deal with the sequence shifts. Deal with the names forging and switching. Deal with the extortion. The courts do not provide writing. They forge names, switch names, and separate their roles with the locations crime. They separate subjects so they can fabricate more audio and video. They are perfected victim predators. Everyone's opinions and convictions because of this. They could not have a free election. I asked right through it. Even on the phone, they're involved with wire crimes now, mail crimes. This Leahy family pretended he had whole conversations with me about cases he's involved with the federal criminals with, including former director of the FBI, their co-defendant in the 2006 case, again, that was ongoing in the context of my father's death. These are also, before that, part of the 2006 case. Thaddeus Grabowski, I didn't know who he was yet. He was already recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts on off Fox Connecticut News in the buildings next to them, with the same people that were involved with creations of instances as illusions with locations and with narratives completely made up in the past, like these Mendez police, with the judges and prosecutors, people involved with the houses next to the schools, involved with juxtaposed natures of organized crime with the kids and uses of it per their needs to hide libel aggressions tied to the Predicate Acts method, which is uses of all those tools, uses of those positive and negative treatment natures to all locations. That's uses of correlation nature's identity to all those locations. That's uses of everyone needing to blame the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, natures on other things other than self. When you make separated when they make subjects treatments. So it is recorded how the individuals on off the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, the houses next to it, on off the state of Connecticut prison offices, the houses next to it. They are involved with remote uses of themselves and of their predicate acts roles, if as wrongdoing or sequence shifts, whatever, and as their uses of other people's identities, and as their uses of readings of statutes where they commit crimes with locations because then they can get over where they pretend their integrity is more than other people. Where the reading of the law is used as truth as lie, and or lie as truth, same / lie as truth simultaneously. Where they give credibility to people where they're not supposed to, but they've been doing it, so they self-value that having been done. So like this Trantolio and Trantolo has been making allegations of me, has roles with interbranch fabricating audio and video with private. Now these are people also with doctors that did this and do this. There's a Judge Killian also involved with sequence shifts and with rape threats with people on Facebook and with doctors that pretend I had conversations with it and they told me not to be on Facebook. Now these are people involved with extortion of me, inter-industries. I have been prevented from working in boxing because they also used and are using the victims as tools of Connecticut boxing leadership and roles with judges and prosecutors and people involved with predicate acts on my street, where and how they have uses of the intelligence community in each age of fact treatment nature and military, like tied to this Dillon family, tied to the people's, tied to people associated with the corners of Highcrest Street, where the principal child defenders campus is further involved with other campuses in town with locations next to them, and with people with locations next to other schools like Trinity College and CCSU, and like a CCSU magnet school on Farmington Avenue. This is where and how the interbranch are used remotely, kept needing to hide libel aggressions, kept needing to hide uses of their physical delusions, which is also a problem. Like, you have physical delusions too, with a lot of people at once, because as a victim, Anderson Cooper, when you say systemic racism, when people pick up the identity as is, like when the women and black people are fighting for rights separately, for right to vote. Simultaneously, everyone's defenses of they're leaving out correlations, leaving out how the Constitution was supposed to be defended unabridged, leaving out how it was abridged, leaving out how those identities were already there themselves, the complete possession. See how big England was? It was not in possession of its identity. Was it allowed to speak that? No. Were our founders and founding parents with free speech? No. If they were with free speech, would they leave slavery? No. As other taught in our schools, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. Is it standing, pretending to be capable of speaking for what's positive and what's negative and who is? No. please respond for the schools simultaneously. I want a response for the Connecticut Inter branch and for the schools with the names forging, switching, sequence shifting, and for the rape threats, as also the other, all kind of people tied to the Facebook. Like, these are also people involved with forensics locations through time. They have involvements with predicate acts, with locations, and with the creation of instances where they have that are being and having been involved roles with the natures of falsified police reports and the methods by that, and per the method using that, and having used it for their roles with the World Trade Center attack, and for their roles with union corruption and job sites corruption, overt criminal enterprises that take collusion with that on campuses, where they're using lipogressions, little boys and girls involved with lipogressions, and where they are simultaneously using fake care and fake criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative. For example, where they have the black and white kids of the interbranch and of the military and of the one criminally foreign influence, involved with wire crime, involved with those lipogressions, involved with the creation of those instances. There's a black guy, I don't know his name, but he's on off the state judicial branch offices, also with the Fianza family, involved with people with predicate acts. A Fianza family confirmed on Facebook his roles with his family with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and a whole bunch of other confessions tied to a Dillon guy, and people that live in his area that are also through time involved with, as strangers that made instances that pretend they know me through that, criminally, involved with falsified police reports, involved with identity thefts and frauds. There's a Sal Civiello and his mother associated with Cub Scouts in the past. I never had anything to do with them. And their houses in their area. That's right across the street from the Fianza family. But they also have a house recorded, confessed, and demonstrated next to the state of Connecticut judicial branch. And those are also people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, all along Route 3, and were involved with mayors and their family, and judges and prosecutors, and with people that were involved with other criminally foreign influence predicate act, uses of them for evidence racketeering, and with the buildings downtown Hartford, on off, and with the spot on off, with the people on off WFSB involved with predicate acts with them, with those locations on it, off it, and in the sequence of it, the same way computers have to work. They're creating instances that they're using and then having to hide how they used. And that is used remotely because they're having to hide that too. And all along, everyone's needing to use sick premises treatments, needing to blame the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures on other things other than themselves, even when correctly, doing it wrongly, the way the breaching method wants and needs. What's that going to cause in New York City where those people are stacked like that? While even the suburbs were designed to cause negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. That could only be overcome if you enter a system blaming the real cause of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and nature on other things other than defending that as a standing criminal insidiousness nature. We have to use the term criminal insidiousness, obviously, to explain what caused slavery, but it was not systemic racism. That's a weapon that takes conjunction right to the campuses, their obligation to be an integrity of science. Beyond that. And while you guys are preventing mandated law and the furtherance of sick medical and sexual and other juxtaposed natures of child abuse and organized crime, also recorded uses, conscious uses of the phenomena, how there are jobs of types of crimes and types of reactions to them, where and how those people involved with that are exploiting that. Because then they go back, because they're hiding how they've been hiding lipogressions by using databases pretending to be medical, that are mental, and medicine, they're just putting fake things in databases. Now this is worse. The time impositions of this are incredible. The building next to the buildings next to a bunch of the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News. and WFSB. And they're hiding behind their rules with whatever's behind.